also get the privilege of introducing the MC for tonight, who's backstage. He's paid me a lot of money to say nice things about him, okay? And then he wrote his own script, so he was sure that I would say the right thing, right? No, seriously, Simon's really very impressive. Simon Fanshawe is a writer, broadcaster, and consultant. He's had a lot of careers. I didn't know if he couldn't hold a job or what, but, you know, he was one of the co-founders of Stonewall and is now a founder and acting chair of the Kaleidoscope Trust. He's written and worked on equality and difference for almost 25 years. After a career as an award-winning comic, when he won the top comedy award at the Edinburgh Fringe, he started to broadcast and write regularly. See, I told you he couldn't hold a job, as both a comedian and a commentator. He continues to do that alongside running the groundbreaking consultancy Astar-Fanshawe, who work in the area close to all of our hearts of putting equality and difference at the center of transformation of organizations and businesses. Someone recently called him a provocateur with a purpose. I think that's a nice title, don't you? We're delighted to have him with us this evening. Please give a warm welcome to tonight's MC, Simon Fanshawe. Simon.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and thank you so much for asking me to be with you tonight. And thank you so much to Out and Equal for this wonderful invitation. It's an absolute delight to be here. And I'm so happy to be asked to speak, and I'm absolutely delighted, actually, at this particular part of the conference, there aren't any feedback forms. I really hate them. I really hate them. I did a conference recently, and there was a pile of them, and I thought, well, I'll sneak a peek, you know, see what they'd written about my contribution. And somebody had written against my name, if there was only an hour left to live in the rest of my life, I'd want to spend it listening to a speech by Simon Fanshawe. And at the end, there was an asterisk, and I turned to the continuation page, and they'd written, because it would seem like eternity. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I very much hope that you don't end up with that feeling. I always say I don't mind people looking at their watches while I'm speaking, but it always pisses me off if they start to tap them to see if they're still working. And what a pleasure it's been to spend the last 2 days with you. What a crowd, so handsome, so confident, so ambitious, so influential. What a brown noser am I. It is a real delight, actually, to be here. And as the introduction said, all those years ago, I was one of the co-founders of Stonewall. And when we started, we really never believed that in under 25 years there'd be conferences like this, that there'd be out gay politicians, cabinet members in the UK and the US, let alone someone like David Correa, an out gay man running for office in Kenya. When I started in comedy in 1981, there were just 2 of us here in the UK, myself and Julian Clary. Now you can't move for gay comics on the television. I did a documentary recently on 30 years, my 30 years in gay comedy, and I counted 17 lesbians and gay men on primetime TV. Oscar Wilde called us the love that dare not speak its name. Now we're the love that won't bloody shut up. And hurrah for that! And in the last quarter of a century, our lives have improved unimaginably. We have made amazing strides. Discrimination may still be an everyday event, but it's no longer an all-day event. But there are still, as we know, 78 countries where it's illegal to be gay. And that's why a bunch of us have started the Kaleidoscope Trust, to give support and solidarity to those activists abroad. And on Wednesday, we launched this campaign, Imagine If It Were Illegal to Be You. So do go onto the website, kaleidoscopetrust.com, and look at the ad, which has been produced by M&C Saatchi for us. But even abroad, difficult and dangerous and life-threatening as it may be, in an oddly counterintuitive way, I think we can take heart from the hideous, repressive reaction of religious and other groups in Iran and Uganda and Sri Lanka and Gambia, to mention just a few, because it's a reaction to gay people now visible who were never visible before. Over the last 10 years, there has been an irreversible upswing in LGBT activism. That repression is a terrible backhanded compliment to the unfeasible courage of those lesbians, gay men, and transgendered people breaking ground and asserting their rights, and we salute them. But back here, home in Europe and in the States and other countries, I'd like to ask you a question. At the end of these 2 days, that while all the progress we have been talking about may be better for us, why is it better for society at large? Because that's our historic mission. It's not just about us. It's about the world. It's about our families and our friends and our children. It's about the way we all live and the society we want to build. When we set up Stonewall, we alighted on an overarching principle for the organization. I don't think we knew of the power of what we were doing. We framed what we did not just in terms of lesbians and gays, but simply in terms of equality. And that meant that when we shone the lesbian and gay questions through the prism of that principle, they became much bigger questions. They became questions about society. The age of consent became a question not about us, but about equal treatment under the law for everybody. Whether lesbians and gays could foster, adopt, or bring up children became a bigger question about what were the qualities society demanded of its parents. It wasn't a question about gay or straight parents, it was a question about good parents. And lifting the ban on the military, that became about what qualities of leadership and comradeship we wanted to see in our armed forces. And the arguments against that were hilarious. I was on television day after day after day arguing about that, and I had high-ranking army officers talking to me about the showers. Now, I don't know if you think the same thing as me, but to be perfectly honest, if your job is to go out and face a battalion of the Taliban coming over to you, over the hill to you with a bunch of AK-47s, if you're scared because someone thinks you've got a cute arse in the shower, I think you're in the wrong job. No, oh, my butt, my butt. So how do we put what we've been talking about in this conference and learn from each other at the very center of what our companies and organizations do? You see, I think equality and diversity is in danger of becoming an industry of its own. It's in danger of becoming just another phrase that turns off as many people as it inspires. How many times you say to people, I work in equality, and I think it needs rescuing. And that's why we started our own consultancy business, because we think it needs a new language, a new framework. We think we need to go back to first principles. Because at base, what is the work we all do? Whatever you call it, diversity, equality, inclusion, what is it really about? It's very simple. We're in the business of unleashing potential and tearing down the barriers to the development of that potential. That's what we do. We don't need a business case for that. You either run your company like that and believe it'll increase its value and power, or you don't. Michael Porter, the great Harvard business professor, recently made the point that if business continues just to profit, they will destroy capitalism. No amount of CSR, fair trade, or for that matter, diversity and inclusion will prevent that. He argues that we need a new concept of shared value, where doing good in society is not an imposition on business, it's not an extra cost, it's what business is for. If you harness the power of talent to solve the problems of the world, to answer society's needs, then you'll develop new technologies, new operating methods, new management approaches, and as a result, you will increase your productivity in your markets. It's a great paper. Do read it. It's called Creating Shared Value, Harvard Business Review. And that's the business we're in. In the conference brochure, there's a lovely phrase. It says, brilliance isn't born out of conformity. And we are in the business of non-conformity. And boy, does traditional business need that business. Non-conformity is the seedbed of innovation. All around us, companies are facing the challenge of a new economy. In construction, where they cut off half the potential market just to whistle at it, the pressure of increasing costs and carbon reduction will drive out firms that fail to innovate in talent and technology. In publishing, newspapers and music, the internet has turned the business models on their head. In the utilities, and we're working with one of the largest in the UK at the moment, they are faced with the traditional nature of their talent base at the same time of a massive need for innovation in the face of constrained supply and global warming. So over the next decade, they have to innovate so they can sell less power to us for more profit. So where will the leadership come from to rise to those challenges? Well, one answer, I think, lies in what we all do when we do it well. At the moment, though, I think we're only working at first base, and we need now to move towards a new summit. You see, broadly, what most of us do at the moment is to deal with three overlapping but different areas: equality, diversity, and tackling discrimination. And basically, that is good housekeeping for good companies. It's quite complex because even though they get lumped together, they're actually different things and need to be accurately defined and deployed. Equality, people find quite tricky. They see it as a zero-sum game. More women on boards, men lose out. In Norway, legislation in 2004 gave a deadline of 2008 to achieve 40% women directors. Now, there are 44.2% women directors on Norwegian boards. But interestingly, all the boards have got bigger. The men haven't moved out at all. Diversity, on the hand, everybody loves. It's saris, it's sambas, it's multicultural celebrations, it's carnivals, it's everybody coming together. It's the world of the vegetarian samosa. Oh, I always say, unless you're gluten intolerant, the vegetarian samosa is the most unifying thing in the entire world. Northern Ireland, Helmand province, all they need is more vegetarian samosas. Be over in a second. And everybody agrees that tackling discrimination is right. Everybody thinks we should be fair. No one is in favor of bullying, but actually standing up to it still takes guts. So the three are all different, and they require quite different strategies. That does need determination, but in the end, why would anyone want to be part of a company or run a company that didn't follow good practice in each? That's Fairness 101. And we're all working on it. But there's much, much more to be done. Our new territory, I believe, is another step beyond. We now need to develop what we've learned about the fundamental reasons why we do this work, and through that, create the next wave, which is to invest in the power of difference to create innovation. And that requires expertise and thought. What will affect real change in our organizations in the future and therefore in society? It's to identify and recruit for difference in our teams and boards. It's to value difference in the way that we work and to manage difference skillfully so that we develop a creative culture of challenge. So while we work to establish the basics, fundamental fairness at work, we must set our sights higher. We must dedicate ourselves to what I rather poncily recently called the culture of creative abrasion. But reflect for a moment on the crisis in financial services and think about that. And remember what Michael Porter said. What were the boards of RBS, Northern Rock, and Barclays and other banks doing? Why were those non-execs sitting on their hands and being rolled over by powerful chief execs? Why were those investment teams just following the herds? Because there was no culture of challenge. There was no habit of challenge. Famously, or perhaps notoriously now, the CEO of Citibank, Chuck Prince, said in 2007 to the Financial Times, when the music stops in terms of liquidity, things will be complicated. But as long as the music is playing, you've got to get up and dance. And we're still dancing. Groupthink is the enemy of good risk-taking. Groupthink is the enemy of an innovating company. And you are in the vanguard against groupthink. You live difference. That's what you do. And to truly value difference, I mean, we now need to go further than gay or straight, men or women, black or white. Now it needs to go further to personality, to heritage, to provenance, to class, to skills, to building teams that have difference in their DNA. Engaging lesbians, transgender people, people of color, people with disabilities, women, all this is highly significant. But to some extent, we are all proxies for an even greater culture of difference. And we have to be honest about what this means. I mean, don't recruit me to your company board and think it's difference just because I'm gay. I'm the same old thing. I'm a university-educated middle-class man. I mean, the financial crisis would not have happened if we'd recruited a few more fags to the boards of banks. But it might have been averted if someone somewhere had recruited boards for difference, teams for difference, and created a challenge, a culture of challenge rather than one of tribal loyalty. And that's why we in our company, that's why we do the work we do with teams and boards. It comes from this sense that what we all do, what you do, what I do, really has this power to transform organizations. And you know how to do that. Difference is your bread and butter. We LGBT people can be the outriders for innovation. And to do that, I think we need to do three things. We need to make sure that the values and changes we advocate are not just about us. They're about the whole company and about the whole society, that they speak to a principle beyond our self-interest. That we use what we know about being lesbian or gay or transgender in the world to innovate and not to conform. And that we set out to make teams of difference, boards of difference, and creatively manage them so that we always develop challenge and innovation and don't just tick the box of compliance and conformity. We must continue to right the wrongs of the past by ensuring that LGBT people live in a fair and equal world. But what we are learning from those battles must now equip us for a new phase where identifying, valuing, and managing difference transforms the kind of businesses we run and the places we work and the kind of society that we want to live in. Thank you very much.